Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this FlaskUp.com Mr. Pandaria raiding guide. And in this video we're going to be taking a look at the normal mode version of Galakras in the new Siege of Orgrimmar raid. Now in order to complete this fight you're going to want to bring 2 tanks, 2 to 3 healers, probably 3 healers for your first time round just to get a feel for the fight, and then the remaining a mixture of both melee and ranged DPS. Now in this fight you don't actually fight Galakras until later on in the fight, and at the very start you will fight waves of different NPCs that will come to try and kill you. It's also worth noting that you will also be getting help from some of your faction leaders, so if you are Alliance you'll have Jaina, Verissa and the King of Stormwind, and if you are Horde you will have Sylvanus, Aethys Sunrunner and Theron. Now, each of these have their own kind of small set of abilities. They do pretty much have identical abilities for Horde and Alliance, and they will help you throughout the fight. For example, they will fire at people in order to deal moderate damage to them, or they will put a damaging zone on the floor, where if you tank the mobs in them, they will take additional damage, or they will also tank the mobs. If at any point during the fight one of these NPCs dies, the fight will reset and you will have to start over again, so you need to keep that in mind. They do also have a very large health pool. I think they all have around like 70 million health, but that's kind of counterable and we'll tell you why in a moment. So as I previously mentioned, during this fight there will be a range of NPCs that will come during the waves. Now in total you want to aim for about 8 waves before Galakras actually spawns, and some waves can be more damaging than others. So first of all we'll take a look at the range of different mobs that you could face against. Now the first mobs are Dragonmaw Bone Crushers, and these will charge the distant faction leaders, stunning them, and while they're stunned they will perform a barrage of deadly attacks, and they pretty much knock off 10% of the faction leader's health every second. You need to stun these Bone Crushers when they do charge, and you need to kill them off as soon as possible. The next mob is a Dragonmaw Tidal Shaman, and these shamans will cast healing spells on their allies and also summon violent tidal waves in order to damage their enemies. They will also drop healing tide totems, which will need to be killed off as soon as possible, as they heal allies for 10% of their total health every 2.5 seconds. These are also kind of a high priority to kill off due to the fact that they can heal very, very powerfully. The next mob is a Dragonmaw Flameslinger, and these shoot deadly fire-tipped arrows at random players. Now this effect lingers on the ground, and it will also burn you if you happen to stand in it, so you need to make sure you move out of any small fire patches on the ground. The next mob is a Dragonmaw Grunt, and these will try and crush their enemies with devastating blows, so you need to make sure that when these do spawn you are using some kind of cooldown if needed as a tank, as you will be taking high amounts of damage. Dragonmaw Windreavers will spawn on the wings of Proto-Drakes, and these will hurl axes at random players inflicting physical damage, and they will also net random players rooting them in place. This could cause issues when the Dragonmaw Flameslingers are firing the fire-tipped arrows at you. The next mob is the Dragonmaw Proto-Drake, and these Proto-Drakes will channel a frontal cone of flame at their enemies. You just need to make sure that these are facing away from your raid while they are channeling this ability. The next NPC is a Dragonmaw Flagbearer, and these Flagbearers inspire their allies. Yes, inspiration! And they will drop a banner that increases melee, ranged and spellcasting speed by a high percentage. It will also increase the damage that the friendly NPCs do by quite a high percentage as well for 2 minutes, so you need to kill off this flag bearer and also the flag that he drops. And finally the next NPC is a Corcoran Demolisher, and this is a siege weapon that will spawn, and it will attack the 2 towers that you have probably seen on screen already, and we'll speak about these towers in a moment. Now as well as these NPCs there are also 4 more powerful mobs that will spawn at certain points during the fight, and this is on the 3rd wave, the 4th wave, the 7th wave and the 8th wave. The first more powerful NPC is Master Cannoneer Dagrin, and he will shoot at random players nearby, inflicting heavy amounts of damage that you just need to heal through. Now he will also unleash a Muzzle Flare, which is a kind of frontal cone ability that he will cast, which will inflict a moderate amount of physical damage multiple times per second, and it also knocks players back. Now if he spawns on the 4th wave, this is when one of your groups will be up in one of the towers, and this knockback can cause you to fall off. Again, we'll speak about that later on in the guide. The next mob is Lieutenant General Krugruk, I think I've pronounced that right maybe, and he will cast a Thunderclap, which will shatter the ground and slow nearby players' movement speed and also deal a small amount of damage. He will also cast Arcing Smash, which is where he will rear back his spear, in rear with the gear I guess, StarCraft 2 reference, and he will inflict a high amount of physical damage to players in a frontal cone and also knock them back. The next NPC is called High Enforcer Thranok, and he will cast an ability called Shattering Cleave, which will cause him to swing his weapon and inflict 250% normal damage to his primary target and also additional nearby targets. So you just kind of need to make sure that you keep him away from the raid because of the splash damage he does. His next ability is called Crusher's Crawl, and this is where he will lash out with chains and hook random players within 45 yards and pull them to his location. Now after the pull, he will also try and begin casting his savage attack Skullcracker, and this inflicts a very high amount of physical damage to all players that are within 10 yards, so you just simply need to run away from him. This damage location will be marked out on the ground, so you should know where to move from. And the fourth and final more powerful NPC is called Korgra the Snake. Now, she casts several abilities, the first one being Poison Tipped Blades, and this is where she will do as she says and tip her blades with poison, which will inflict a small amount of nature damage every second to her primary target, and this is also a stacking debuff. Her next ability is called Curse of Venom, and when her health falls low, she will let her Curse of Venom take effect, and this causes her to take the form of a snake, which allows her to cast a new ability called Deadly Venom Bolt Volley, and this shoots poison at everyone in the raid and inflicts a moderate amount of nature damage. His next ability is called Poison Cloud, and this is where she will shatter a vial of poison, causing a cloud to appear at random players' feet. Now, this poison cloud will inflict damage every second to anyone that stands in it, so simply move out. Her next ability is called Dragonmaw Ebon Stalker, and upon Korgra's command, the stealth units, stealth being the keywords there, will emerge from the shadows behind random targets and stab at them wildly with an ability called Shadow Assault. You need to move out of this because it deals a hell of a lot of damage. So now that's the massive list of NPCs looked at, we can actually move on to take a look at the rest of the fight itself. Now, as I've already mentioned, you will get the larger NPCs spawning on the 3rd, 4th, 7th and 8th waves, and during the fight you will see that there are 2 towers to the right and the left hand side of the raid. What you will do is fight all of these NPCs in the centre where we've got a marker down on the ground, and then occasionally you will need to send one group of players up these towers. We split the raid into 2 groups, each group consisted of a healer, some DPS and a tank. Now when these groups go to the towers, you will see that a Korkron Demolisher has spawned. We recommend that you kill this Demolisher before letting your players go up the tower, because the Demolisher will attack the towers and cause players to get knocked down them. As you make your way up the towers, you will need to kill off some mobs, and when you reach the top you will fight one of the more powerful NPCs. Kill this NPC off and any other NPCs that are up there, and then you gain control of that tower, and at the top of the tower there is an anti-air turret. Eventually you'll use both the tower's turrets to shoot down Galakras, but for the time being you'll just want one player to get into it and shoot any of the proto-drakes that are flying around in the sky. Again, the second tower, which is on the right, will be activated when the 8th wave is appearing roughly, and it's just rinse and repeat. Make sure you kill the Korkron Demolisher first, and then let your group go up the tower in order to gain control of it, and also gain control of the anti-air turret at the top. When you've gained control of both of the towers, you'll want one player to go up each tower and enter the anti-air turret at the top. You'll then want them to shoot simultaneously at Galakras, which will then start phase 2 as he will fall to the ground and try and kill you quite hard. Now he's only got 2 abilities and they're relatively easy to deal with, however he deals a hell of a lot of raid-wide damage, as you will probably see in the video in the background. This is the phase where you'll want to use your Bloodlust, your Time Warps and your Heroisms, or any other damage increasing abilities, as you will want to nuke him very, very fast. Now, Galakras' first ability is called Pulsing Flames, and this will cause him to periodically inflict a small amount of fire damage to everyone in the raid. However, each pulse will increase Galakras' fire damage dealt by 2%, so as the fight goes on, he will begin dealing a very high amount of damage to everyone. Now, as you can probably notice, we've got a couple of three markers on the ground here, but you want to look at the two that are furthest apart. Now, these are used in order to manage the Flames of Galakras ability, and this is where Galakras will target a random player with the Flames of Galakras, and this random player wants to move to the back of the raid, and every other player wants to move into a line that will be between Galakras and the targeted player. Now, this is because the Flames of Galakras will deal less raid-wide damage the more players it travels through, and when it eventually lands on the targeted player, it's meant to deal raid-wide damage, but this can be heavily reduced based on the amount of people the Flames travels through. If someone is standing right next to Galakras, they'll want to move to the back of the raid as fast as possible and make sure that the Flames of Galakras is passing through quite a few players. Unfortunately, this phase is going to be very healer intensive, which is why I did recommend 3 healers at the very start. It could cause a few wipes possibly, but if you chain your cooldowns correctly, you shouldn't really have too much of an issue. So that's going to do it for this Mr. Pandaria raiding guide. As always, thank you for watching, and if you would like to view a written version of this guide, you can head on over to flaskup.com or click on the link in the video description below. Alternatively, if you'd like to view any of our other normal mode raiding guides, then please do feel free to click on one of the annotations that is currently on screen. As always, thank you for watching, and if you are interested in future Mr. Pandaria raiding guides, then please do feel free to subscribe to the channel.